بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نبتدي إن شاء الله اليوم الجلسة النقاشية الأولى. اليوم الجلسة يعني المدراء الجلسة في الأستاذ الدكتور سعد مرسيد معنا يدير الجلسة، وعندنا كذلك إخواننا في جامعة الكويت، وكذلك زائرين موجودين معنا من بريطانيا. فراح نبتدي أول شيء عن طريق محاضرات، ويلحقها حلقة نقاشية نتكلم عن أهمية الابتكارات وتسجيل براءات الاختراع، وشنو أهميتها بالنسبة للجامعة أو للأشخاص أو عضو هيئة التدريس. فراح نبتدي الحين بالبداية مع دكتور هوتان أشرفيان من Imperial College, London. So if you can hear me and maybe you can start your presentation, that would be good. So here we can see you. I don't know if you can see us or not, but we can see you clearly, and I hope that the volume, we can hear you as well. So maybe you can start and put your slides on. And I will... So great. So I'll let Professor Saad to introduce you, and we'll take it from there.
Okay, I've got it.
Yeah.
Hi everybody, thank you very much for attending, and I'm very happy to participate in this event, which is related to the research activity, and everybody knows that the research activity has got a great impact on our university, and I'd like to thank Dr. Sabah and his colleagues in his department for this great effort, and I'd like to thank Dr. Rashid the Vice President of the Research and Operations, and I am asking them just as president, I'd like to be repeated yearly so that everybody can be aware about the research activity in Kuwait University. And thank you very much, Dr. Hotman Ashrafian. I hope that I'm going to pronounce your name rightly. Dr. Hotan is an honorary senior research fellow, chief scientific advisor in Imperial College, London. His research activity are to develop innovative and technological strategies to resolve the global healthcare burden of obesity, metabolic syndrome, obesity related to cardiorespiratory disease, musculoskeletal dysfunction, and cancers. Thank you, Dr. Hotan, and please start your valuable speech.
There was an increased advance in telehealth and in terms of investment on a major scale, the cost of many of these innovative biological technologies and biotech technologies was dropping at a pace that it could be used for the whole of society. At the same time, there was a very beneficial growth in terms of investment in biotech and healthcare solutions, such that over the past a decade, the numbers given for both digital but also biotech investment were going sky high. So that the picture for healthcare was very positive. The problem turned out that although there was an incremental benefit, let's say, in a clinical life expectancy from the 1800s to the 1950s, actually the derived benefits from the 1950s to the early 2000s and beyond has only been incremental, considering that we have advanced technologies and understanding at such a fast pace. In fact, if we look at the global burden of disease, the disability-adjusted life years has been relatively constant from the 1990s until the current decade. And naturally, despite the COVID pandemic that we've all been suffering from, which has had a major impact in itself, ischemic heart disease remains the biggest killer of humans worldwide. The solutions have come from an angle where there's been an applied mathematics to healthcare. And this has been around since the time of Leonardo da Vinci and before, but it's only really been in the past decade or so that we've been able to translate our understanding of the digital space into the health sector. As you can see, we now have the ability to have 50 billion transistors per chip, and this is based on the paradigm Moore's law, suggesting that we can double the number of transistors on a chip every set specified time period, let's say period of a year or so. And so we've been able to grow consistently in that ability, and that has allowed us to have an analytical capability that we've never been able to have before. With that analytical capability, we've been focusing on artificial intelligence algorithms to achieve what the Olympics has tried to do for mankind. That is to go faster, higher, stronger, and be more united, so that we can then translate into our healthcare paradigm faster diagnoses, higher quality care, better decisions, particularly surgical decisions in the initial paradigm, and enhanced patient engagement. But the picture of AI in 2022 and beyond is very varied, and the terms machine learning, artificial intelligence, natural language processing are all terms that have entered the common sphere and have very clear meanings, but they all represent quite distinct areas of a mathematical set of tools that we could use for our modern health approaches. Just to give you an example, there is no one species of a neural network, so that when we talk about deep learning, which is a type of machine learning, there are multiple species, that at the last count there were maybe 540 different species of neural networks. And then this approach of mathematics to healthcare can be broken down into different applications ranging from those of genetic sequencing, real-time decision-making, robotic navigation, and diagnostics. So we now have a vast array of tools to treat healthcare with artificial intelligence. But actually, we need to decide where we go with them. Because artificial intelligence in healthcare can literally be used in every part of our current health pathways. As a result, it might be seen in what people think is a standard approach, which might be having an artificial intelligence agent in a robotic operation. But actually, it can be used in scheduling patients, in recording patient records, in communications between doctors, or in terms of understanding pharmacology and making pharmaceutical prescriptions. Taking a survey of the experts in the health technology space and asking where they thought artificial intelligence might have its biggest role, it seems that approximately 60% of participants would suggest that it would have a big role in cancer, in non-communicable diseases, such as heart disease and diabetes, in neurological diseases, and less so in infectious diseases. This survey was done in 2018, and I would argue that in 2022, after the COVID epidemic, that actually most advanced sequencing and tools used in the COVID pandemic have been AI-based, and therefore infectious diseases would be an extremely good place to be putting our AI capability. I'll give you one example of an AI capability that I worked with in person, and that is to use it in radiology. Radiology seems to be a very useful approach for AI because there are images that are aggregated and selected on common platforms around the world. And when I wrote this book, or edited this book on artificial intelligence in medicine, we looked at all the different uses of AI across all the different fields. And as you can see in this chart from Knowledge Digital Health, really used approach for AI in healthcare at the moment. Then comes cardiovascular, then comes neurology, and then comes literally everything else. And it's because of that ability to be able to have consistency and reduced stability in images allows us to then apply mathematical algorithms in artificial intelligence to this particular domain. But it's only the beginning of this journey, and I would argue that we need to be using it in everything else that we do too. So we wanted to use artificial intelligence in a very strong way, and rather than thinking of where are the problems, we knew we had a very good solution, and we wanted to apply it very quickly to our modern healthcare needs. The healthcare need that we targeted was breast cancer screening. In the UK alone, 2.2 million women are screened for breast cancer a year. It remains a condition that affects 1 in 8 women in their lifetimes. But there is a massive shortfall in the number of people reading radiology news of breast cancer, such that there is a 33% shortfall currently, let's say in the UK, and the predictions are that by 2024, the health resources and staff retention for radiology screening will be even more, and there will be a 43% shortfall. At the same time, there's been a crisis, or a perfect storm of diagnostic need. This is because COVID has been here, and there have been other non-communicable disease needs, so that the number of time and hours that a radiologist will have to focus on radiology screening has dropped dramatically. Our approach was with our colleagues at Google to understand the human reading pathway for radiology screening. And in the UK and most of Europe, there are 2 reader systems where you have every image going on from one radiologist to a second radiologist, and there's a disagreement to have an arbitration process. And this is repeated every 3 years. Our goal was to see if we could have a second radiologist being supported in their place by an AI reader. And we did a study, an international study, looking at both US and UK mammograms, testing something in the order of 26,000 mammograms from several UK screen sites and also from US sites to identify whether we could approach breast screening with an AI tool that could then be used to help diagnose cancers in the screening process. And this was a journey that we took with our friends at Google and CR UK and the Royal Surrey County Hospital. We found that an AI system was superior at spotting cancers versus the UK system, versus 2 radiologists, reducing false positives by 1.2% and reducing false negatives by 2.7%. Simulations also showed that it was able to reduce radiology workload, which is what we intended to do in the first place. So in a non-inferiority diagnostic paradigm, the sensitivity and the specificity of the AI algorithm was in the order of 1 to 2% better than the 2-reader system. But when we compared ourselves to the US system, which has only 1 radiologist in the pipeline for screening, the sensitivity was higher at 9.4% and specificity higher at 5.7%. And this was a superiority study. Just to show you some images of where we actually found areas of concern that were aligned with what a standard radiologist would also find areas of concern on. So our breast screening work was one of improved quality of screening, improved cost effectiveness, improved patient experience, and importantly, improved clinician experience also. The algorithm that we used was a deep learning algorithm that had also been applied a few years previously to win against the world expert on the complex board game Go. We tested on just under 30,000 mammograms, but actually our training and validation was in approximately 100,000 mammograms. So there was a large data set for us to use, and interestingly we used both US and UK data sets at the same time to show that internationality was certainly a process that we could apply here. However, there was a trap, and the trap is that just as we've seen in robotic surgery, there are tools that are very successful, but they're not universally successful. And we needed to pick the use case that would give us the best bang for our buck with our technology. And it's been shown by Furr and Dyer that sometimes generating the solution without understanding the implementation model can result in individuals having to go back to understand the problem if the problem that's actually needing to be answered isn't solved. And in this case, the job was to diagnose and screen for breast cancers. It was also to reduce breast cancer rates and reduce false positives, but it wasn't to replace radiologists. And so that wasn't our aim. The aim was to better support breast cancer screening processes in the UK and the US. And it was successful in its stead as a research paradigm, and now we're actually performing it at an implementation level within trusts for every screening mammogram that comes through. And this is data that will use its evidence to take back to the National Screening Committee to offer a digital solution for breast cancer screening at a population level. Of course, the reality is that not all algorithms are as useful as others. This is a very famous paper by Raj Kumar at Nature Medicine in 2018, looking at a machine learning algorithm looking at predicting hospital admissions and mortality based on an EHR dataset from the United States. And it showed there was a major advance in terms of prediction using the AI algorithm. What wasn't clear at the time, but it's become clear subsequently, is that a classical statistical model without, let's say, an AI model was almost as good. And so for this particular approach, the distinction between AI and classical statistics wasn't as great as one would have imagined. That said, we are currently in our assistive stage of using AI with the clinician. The next stage will be when we have an autonomous information data set, which is the AI tool maybe in our breast cancer screening modality. And finally we go, just as in the autonomous cars, a place where we would have an AI to give us absolutely autonomous decisions. We are not there yet. Why are we not there? The reason we're not there is this is some work that we did with one of my PhD students highlighting that the data capture isn't consistent, the study designs aren't consistent, the data set sizes aren't consistent. When we talk about diagnostic accuracy, the index tests are variable, the machine learning and the data transfer learning are not the same, and there's additional clinical information which is disparate between different data sources. And so when looking at these, the metrics can be very variable too. So, for example, in machine learning we have F-scores and precision recall rates, whereas classics would like this tool. And so we need to make sure that there's homogeneity in our framing of these questions so that we can then use these tools in an appropriate setting. Again, there are issues of AI moving forward that could involve the training environment being different to where the actual algorithms are implemented. So, for example, if I wanted to apply our algorithm in Kuwait, would the results be just as good because we did the training in the US and UK? I think just maybe they would be, because actually there was consistency between our international results, both between the US and the UK, and there's no reason to think that there would be any particular reason not to consider other countries. But we would need to update data shifts can also occur in this paradigm, and of course there could be false compounders and false associations. And algorithmic bias is a known phenomenon that can have either mathematically or socially constructs that can be limiting our interpretation of any AI tool. The study designs that we use will also need to be updated because the classical retrospective versus prospective and the standard RCT standard approach is not necessarily the best one to take in every case for the end of the generation approaches here. And the metrics that we use might be inapplicable or sometimes inaccurate, and again they need to be interpreted by end users such as clinicians and actually patients too. The regulatory space is unknown, we'll be talking about that I'm sure very shortly, and it's something that needs to be optimized. And there is a human factors element here that the usability of any tool is also dependent on the user, and the end users tend to be clinicians and patients themselves. There are, of course, issues of cybersecurity and ethics and governance that are central to any application of any technology in healthcare, and artificial intelligence is not unique in this case. This is a slide showing the UK government's approach to giving users a framework for understanding and selecting AI tools in business in general, considering, if they have data sets that are particularly applicable to AI, including accuracy, completeness, uniqueness, timeliness, validity, sufficiency, etc. This is a framework that can be used internationally. I think people are working on it, and it will be tweaked. It's a living live document and can be improved in the future. And that said, there needs to be both a matrix of interpretability but accuracy at the same time. Traditionally, neural networks haven't been the most interpretable approaches that we've had It's more classical statistics with linear regression that's given us those. But increasingly, we're moving to a space where these neural networks can give us an opportunity to understand the health space and our patients better. To do that, with some of my team in London, we're creating the diagnostic accuracy in AI called Sakg AI, and the meta-analyses subsequent to those that will be able to be reported with a framework in a way that users can use in a better way. To do this, we've done a Delphi of over 240 individuals, ranging from academics, clinicians, computer scientists, regulatory experts, and business leaders to come together to set the national standards for reporting of diagnostic accuracy in AI. And we're also leading the NICE HTA program for reporting of health technology assessments in AI as we move forward. In summary, I think AI machine learning approaches are here to continue to disrupt the health space as we know today, and will have a beneficial effect for the future of all healthcare. However, there are many AI-derived, specifically machine learning tools available, but they carry many different functions, ranging from prediction, organization, to prescription, and these need to be picked and tailor-made for each end use. The future steps for AI in healthcare are to identify these particular nuances of where they can be used in the best possible situations, but importantly, where they can be most interoperable and accommodate the multitude of other digital technologies that grow at the same time, including smartphones, smart operating theatres, electronic health records, and community digital sensing tools. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time.
Hello. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Houghton Ashrafian, for your lectures. I'm not MD, but I'm a chemist. And when you mentioned the radiology and mammograms, just give me attention about that to create a question in my mind. How the depth of the infected area in the breast, does this affect the accuracy of diagnosis using the radiology or not? This is one of the questions. And there was a research activity in treating breast cancer using photodynamic therapy. Is that active and successful in UK or not? Thank you very much. And just if there is any question from the audience as well.
For the next generation of photodynamic therapy will be AI-based. This particular project was a diagnostic one to understand the location of breast cancer for breast screening, and of course we were successfully able to do so. The opportunity to identify breast screening from dense breasts versus less dense breasts is something that we've considered. This is why we actually have something like 130 nanograms with a wide variety of individuals, multiple ethnicities, from many socioeconomic groups and many anatomies, to then be able to highlight that this tool is very useful. So our gold standard was either biological cancer, where we actually had samples of the cancer, or we had negative images. And we were able to even look at sequentially rounds of screening, and that this was allowing us to then accommodate the many factors that you suggested, including breast density, calcification load, size and shape, etc. And despite all of those factors, the efficiency and the accuracy was still very good because the machine learning algorithm was able to use the actual pathology of gold standard.
So thank you, Dr. Houghton.
So that at the moment we're in a place where we use this artificial intelligence algorithm to help support clinicians and and release their time to do lots of other things because it can work 24 hours a day and has high accuracy to identify cancers from breast screening. So that's the first one. That doesn't mean that there is a replacement at this moment in time. This means currently it's going to solve the shortfall and the false positives that we sometimes see in the breast screening paradigm. The next generation, the next 5 to 10 years, will allow us to adopt our workforce, our medical workforce, to have different skills, to focus on direct patient care, and to be able to apply these algorithms at a wider level to answer the question that I was right at the beginning of my talk, which was to minimize that burden of decreasing or stagnant life expectancy and disability adjusted life years. I think the focus will be there, so there will still be a massive need for health practitioners and chemists and engineers and everyone else in society to continue what they're doing. The question in terms of 50 to 100, 200 years becomes a little bit more uncertain in terms of what we predict we can do. But as we've seen, every technology we introduce to mankind, if it's being used in the right way, it's offered an improved quality of life. And maybe this will also improve working qualities of life. And I don't have enough time to kind of go through all of them, but all I can say is that I think if we treat this innovation in the right way, it will take dividends as we move on.
Due to diligence, analysis, and opinions, and assessing with listening questions and diverse chores. Thank you for attending, and please go ahead to start for your speech.
Welcome, Mr. Joshua. I just want to also echo the Professor Saad for introduction. Just keep in mind that we have around 7 minutes.
It's important and critical to know what your invention is. You need to know what it is you've done, what it is you haven't done, and some idea of what it's going to work. I hear a lot from people, do I need to have a working embodiment? Do I need to have a prototype? Absolutely not. But you need to know how everything is going to work, what is going to happen, or an idea of what is going to happen, and move on from there. The way to find out whether or not you actually have an invention is, of course, by starting with a search. See what other people have done before. You don't know what's available for you and what's not available for you. Once you have a search and you have some idea both of what you've invented, what everybody else has done, you have to prepare your patent application. Well, what does this mean? Number one, you have to draft claims of varying scope. What do I mean by that? So you want to think about your invention from the broadest possible terms. How do I cover everybody who's out there who might be doing what I'm doing? As well as small, narrow. How do I make sure that nobody else can duplicate exactly what I'm doing? The reason for this is very simple. The whole idea of getting a patent is to stop others from competing with you. Patents are negative rights. They help you keep others away from what you're doing, keep others away from the market. They don't actually let you do anything. So the idea here is, if you get something very broad, a lot of protection, you can keep others from competing not just with your own specific version of what you've done, but you can also stop them from doing other competing things of what you've done. In the healthcare space, for example, if you have a new cancer drug, a new oncology drug, You don't want to protect just the specific drug, but anything that might operate the same way or be similarly related. You need to plan in advance and try to think, not just what am I doing, not just what might others do, but also think from the perspective of how do I actually get this patent through the process? And make sure you include a lot of backup positions. So if a patent examiner says to you, I found another document, somebody else has done what you've done, you have support and the ability to easily go around that, craft around that, and still get your patent. The other really critical area is deciding what to include and what not to include. If you still have research underway, under development, and you have ideas that might be helpful in the future, even if you know them right now, you might not want to include them in your patent application. You might want to reserve them for a future patent application. Every time you file a patent application, it starts your clock running, your clock of how long you're protected for when you file. So if you reserve some ideas for future patent applications, you get a new shot at that 20-year clock. You then have to decide, what's my best filing strategy? Do I need a patent quickly? Is it okay for it to take normal amount of time? Do I need to give myself more time to do research? These are all possibilities. So if you need a quick patent, we recommend filing what's called a request for prioritized examination. You pay an extra fee to the US government, and you go to the front of the queue. There's no waiting in line. You'll be done within 1 year. If you don't do something like that, it's going to take 2 to 4 years. Maybe if you're in the healthcare space, that's less concerning. But if you're looking for investment, you want to have that patent in hand. Then, of course, there's how do you actually get your patent through the process once you've filed. And what we always recommend as the single best way to get through the process and get your patent is to talk with your patent examiner. Have this examiner interview where you can hear what the examiner's concerns are, the examiner can hear what your answers are and what your thoughts are, and you can reach an agreement. If you go back and forth, all by written documents, maybe you'll get to an agreement, but it will probably take longer than if you have this conversation. If you have this discussion with the examiner and can be very focused on what it is they're looking for. Sometimes you get a bad examiner, and you have to be prepared to appeal their decision to the internal patent office court, the Patent Trial and Appeals Board. That will take longer, but I'll tell you, sometimes it's the only way to get through whatever barriers you have in front of you. And also, you have to be prepared to give. It's not just, okay, examiner, give me what I want, and I'll argue and argue and argue. You have to be prepared for a give and a take. You give up something, you amend the scope of your claims so a little smaller protection, the examiner will give something and we'll get closer to an agreement that what you have is patentable. At the end of the day, that's what we're doing this for, to get you a patent, to protect your innovations, your technologies, whatever it is you're doing. I know I have a short time today, so I want to thank you everybody for listening.
Thank you very much, Joshua. Is there any questions? I've got a questions. You said the examiner. On which basis you choose your examiners? This is one question. And could you comment on this statement? I can say, if I've got a patent, and this patent does not produce many well-reputed papers in very recognizable journals, I think this patent, it is useless.
Okay, well, to answer your first question first, you don't actually get to choose your examiner. The examiner is chosen for you by the patent office. You file your patent application. Somebody at the patent office has the job of looking at what the technology is and fitting your patent application into the right area, the right technology center at the patent office. And then it is randomly assigned from that technology center to a certain examiner. So it's very much luck as to whether you get the right examiner, a good examiner, one that you have to educate or not, one who's experienced or not. And unfortunately, there's no way around that. That's just the way it is. So hopefully, when you file, you get an examiner you can work with. And I think for most of them, you can work with. It's the very few who you really have to be concerned about. And that's why the appeals process is there. As far as whether or not the patent is reviewed in a peer journal, I view that as something completely separate from the patent. The patent is a business tool. That's all it is. It's a way, again, to help you stop competitors. Whether or not it's been peer reviewed, published in a journal, you certainly don't want it published in a journal before you file, because that could impact their ability to get a patent. But really, all it is, it's an asset, no different than if you buy a house, a piece of real property. It defines what you own, what you can stop others from doing. Just like if you own a piece of property, you can stop others from coming onto it. If you own a patent, a piece of IP, you can stop others from doing what you say you've made that's yours.
Thank you. I have one question. When you are looking for a thread between what you're doing, between what your patent is and what other people have done, do you look for a thread only what is produced in the States or all over the world, like Chinese? Maybe there are some threads that are written in different languages. Do you have to translate all of those languages to look for a thread, or just do it based on the country that you are going to file your patent?
That's a great question. And the answer is anything that was made publicly available anywhere in the world, in any language, could be considered prior art, could be considered a document showing what somebody else has done that can stop you from getting a patent. What we do is we use a variety of search tools, electronic search tools, that at the very least have machine translations. For example, from Germany, if you're talking about a German, if you're talking about a European patent. From Chinese, if you're talking about a patent in China or a journal article in China. Same thing for other countries. So that we can at least search some sort of translation of whatever is out there to find out what other people have done. Is it absolutely foolproof? Of course not. And you also have to look at the cost. You can search forever without necessarily finding everything. And where is that cost benefit? When do I have enough searching, a good idea that I've found what's out there, versus how much is it costing to finish that search?
Okay, thank you very much, Joshua. The next one is from Privilex, the company, Dr. DJ Nag. Hello?
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Dr. DJ Nag, as he's widely recognized as a global intellectual property strategist working with the government and universities in different parts of the world. Dr. DJ Nag started and leads two companies, the Privilex and Innovato for patent creation and licensing. He was a director at Ocean Tomo, a company that created patent auctions and was recognized as one of the top IB strategies by IAM 300 in 2019. Currently, he teaches intellectual property strategy and negotiations as a professor of practice at Rutgers University, lecturer at the ITQ Nova, Portugal, and visiting professors at Shizuoka University in Japan. Thank you very much, and please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your kind introduction. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes. Let me share my screen here and go ahead and get started. Again, good afternoon. I enjoyed the comments by Mr. Goldberg and Dr. Ashraflan. Thank you so much for your speech. This afternoon, I'm going to focus on some high-level impacts of intellectual property and how IP can actually create a tremendous impact, both globally and regionally. As was mentioned, I do teach a full course, which is a 48 hours, 3 credit course. I'm going to keep my comments only to 7 minutes this morning or this afternoon, and hopefully establish to you why patents are valuable. I used to work at a company called Ocean Potomo, and what we did was we auctioned patents, just like Christie's and Sotheby's auctions are. We did that for patents, and that was a very successful business that I used to run. During the time, we established this very important study which showed the value of intellectual property. In the United States, we have the top 500 companies, the S&P 500 companies that comprises the stock market index, as you probably all know. What we went and looked at was the intangible value of these companies. And when we looked at back in the 70s and looked at the value of a company, only about 20%, 17% to be exact, in 1975, of a company's valuation was intangible, and the rest of it was tangible, what you would call lock, stock, and barrel sort of thing. So as you move forward, what you observe is in about 20 to 30 years' time, suddenly you see a shift in the value of the company, where about 80% of a company's valuation becomes intangible, and only 20% is the tangible valuation. And we attribute that to 2 things. One is this is really the shifting from a manufacturing economy to an innovation economy, and the shift to Google, Microsoft, and all of the other companies that are out there, where most of the value is created from its intellectual property assets. And this is not only a study by Ocean Potomo, but if you've observed what Aon did, one of the global leaders in intellectual property strategy, they did a similar study, and what they have done and they found in 2018, if you look at the top 5 companies by value, you will notice that they are Apple, Google, Alphabet, Microsoft, Amazon, and Facebook. And the combined value that these companies bring together in the S&P 500 is about $25 trillion. So that's a large amount of valuation. And of that, about $21 trillion can be attributed to intangible assets. And the interesting thing, again, to observe is if you look back in 1975, 1985, and so on and so forth, the earlier days, a lot of the companies that you see there were based on tangible assets, and that shift has occurred. So what I'm here to tell you is that the intangible asset of companies and universities, for that matter, matters a lot. Now, if you look at some of the value of intellectual property from the companies in 2014 in one single quarter. Microsoft, which happens to be a hardware and a software company, did about $2 billion in patent licensing in that one quarter. 70% of the revenues was attributed to just patent licensing. And 94% of the gross margin of Microsoft as a company that quarter was from patent licensing. So really, patents can provide a tremendous amount of value for a company. And just to establish that fact, you look at Technicolor, formerly RCA, they owned a lot of patents, and the total revenues generated by Technicolor in 1 year happened to be about 118 million euros. And again, if you look at what Technicolor has been able to achieve year over year, is a good percentage of the revenues is generated from patent licensing. Qualcomm produces about a third of its revenues and 80% of its profits from patent licensing. And the most stark, perhaps, is IBM, which remains a leader not only in production of patents every year as the global leader for U.S. patents, but the patent licensing business, IBM generates between $1.5 billion to $2.5 billion every year just from patent licensing. Just to replicate that profit margin that IBM establishes every year through patent licensing, they would need to produce $20 billion in revenues every year just to replicate that patent licensing profitability that IBM produces. So if you look at these companies and then take a look at the most recent transaction that BlackBerry did, BlackBerry's business was not going that great, as we all probably know, the shift towards iPhone and other types of phones. BlackBerry sold its patents for a whopping $600 million, just its patents. So from a corporate standpoint, you can see why patents could be very valuable. Now let's take a look at what we are in the midst of. We are in the midst of an innovation war, let's face it. And if you look at some of the top economies in the world, this is a recent study in 2019 done by the R&D magazine. You see the bubbles here represent the total amount of research and development in every nation. And on the y-axis, what you see is the number of engineers and scientists per million population. So in that, if you take a look at it, you can see that the United States, which used to be the absolute global leader in R&D, is now challenged by China. And some of the other interesting bubbles over there you will observe are South Korea, Finland, and Israel, and Japan. And so what that tells you is the percentage of GDP that is being spent on the x-axis as a nation, and again on the y-axis is the number of scientists and engineers. So this, I believe, is a proxy to the innovation that is created. R&D is a proxy to the innovation that is created, and innovation again is probably a proxy to the intellectual property that is created amongst these nations. C are the factors here that I've laid out. China's ascent, which really even 5 or 7 years back, China did not produce as much intellectual property as it does today. The increasing value of IP, as I've established to you in my first couple of slides. Research is really key, and research is what produces the significant number of patents for many of these nations that I again showed to you. The insourcing of R&D, I think, is critical. By that, what I mean is, we see a lot of outsourcing of research and development in the United States, and that has really led us to produce less number of patents, and I will show you in a moment, and some of the establishment of other universities and companies which are producing more and more intellectual property. But I think the bottom line is to be global yet be local, because being local produces the innovation. Just like at Kuwait University, we've been working very closely with your office and assisting with a lot of the intellectual property strategy. And what I'd like to show you is kind of the Middle Eastern regions R&D investments, the latest numbers that I found. And as you can tell, the percent of GDP that I showed as R&D budget, a lot of the nations here are doing great. I've shown just as an example, what Kuwait is doing in terms of R&D here. So again, from a macroeconomic standpoint, I think it's important that the R&D be supported and more intellectual property be created. Just to end my talk, I would like to present to you the global university patenting numbers. And as you will see, as we call it, the usual suspects are at the top of this list. And this is the total number of patents produced in 2021, US patents produced. You will see the first three of them, the universities are all university systems. Again, Arizona's up there, the Florida system is there, University of California is there, and not surprisingly, MIT is there at the top, and with 402 patents issued in 20. Is this list was exclusively all U.S. universities before. Now you see more and more other nations showing up in that list. As you see, there's King Abdulaziz University, there's Hanyang University showing up in the top list of universities. So we expect this to be happening. We expect a lot of the MENA region universities to be doing very well in terms of creation of intellectual property. And we would definitely want to see Kuwait University up there at the top and produce a lot more patents as it is doing great amount of research. Just to end my comments this afternoon, we believe that artificial intelligence is going to be a big driver in the patent dominance in the future. And the quality of patents that Mr. Goldberg alluded to a little bit in his talk as well is going to be key in terms of patent dominance. Not only does the number of patents matter, the quality of patents do matter. And AI is there to stay, not so much in producing the patents per se, but really in assisting as a technology. And that's the technology that we have adopted across the board in our company called Brevillex. We've been producing great quality results for intellectual property. And again, it's been a pleasure working with the Kuwait University team, and it is my pleasure to deliver these comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aditi, for an excellent presentation. So we will start with panel discussion right now. So what that means is that we ask the inventors who are online with us. We have Dr. Ahmed Nabil, we have Mohammed Ansari, and we have also both lawyers with us, the patent lawyers. We have also Dr. Hutan. So, but also we have here from Kuwait, we have Mr. Hamid Aftan from Markaz Sabah Ahmed for Innovation. So please welcome on the stage, as well as Dr. Ahmed Hashim from KU, who is also have a good experience with patents, and Professor Saad Merced, who will also be on the stage. So the whole idea of this discussion will be to talk about patents and the importance of patents, but not only that, we're also focusing on how we can, what challenges all these inventors had, and how we can move forward to be in the list that you just showed, and how we can improve the economy through these innovations. So also we have Dr. Nasser Hussein from Kuwait Law, who is also seconded at our research sector, and he also will have his perspective on law, international law as well. With that, we'll start, with general questions, and then maybe we take questions from the audience and see how how you faced patents and how it was useful for you and what challenges. So I'm going to start with, first of all, maybe all of you give a quick introduction for those who did not introduce themselves, and let us know who are you and what patents you have done, and at what stage you are right now. So I'll start with Dr. Ahmed Hashim. Go ahead. Dr. Ahmed, can you press on the button beside you?
So our experience, basically, we have one patent that is already granted. That was granted in 2016. And it was actually applied for in 2005, so we had a very long time. Sorry?
That's fine. They can.
And then we have another patent application which we applied for about a year and a half ago during the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic, and we've been granted a provisional application, and we're waiting now for the full patent. I can come back later on to describe the process in more detail once my colleagues there have a...
Okay, so Mr. Hamad, if you can introduce yourself.
Assalamu alaikum. It's Hamad Al-Aftan, Head of Business Development at the Innovation Department at Sakg Sabah Al-Ahmed Center for Creativity and Giftedness. Our main role to empower the innovators in Kuwait by helping them in all the phases of patent registration and the prototype development, and also in the commercializing stage. I think that we are in the market for 10 years. We are a non-profit company. We are part of KFAS, Kuwait Advancement Science, Advancement of Science. I am glad and pleased to be here, and I hope that I can add something to you.
Thank you, Mr. Hamad. Dr. Saad.
I am Saad Merced from Chemistry Department. I've got 2 patents. The first one, it has been published in 2002 by Manchester University, and the second one, which has been published by Kuwait University recently, before about 2 years. And the first one is related to the porous material, which can capture in carbon dioxide and hydrogen storage. And the second one is related to the photodynamic therapy for treating some cancers, such as breast and ovary cancers. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm Nasser Al-Rashid. I'm assisting in the patent office of Kuwait University with Dr. Salman and Dr. Rashid. And I'm assistant professor at the university, Kuwait University here, law school.
Thank you, Dr. Nasser. So we have on the screen Dr. Ahmed Nabil, if you can introduce yourself.
My name is Ahmed Nabil. I'm a physician from Kuwait, currently doing my PhD at Imperial College London. And I recently completed my master's in surgical innovation. I'm also an MIT Tech Review Innovator under 35. And I have one patent for a surgical tool that we call Plans. We got the patent late last year, and glad to be here, and I thank the organizers and Dr. Salman for their kind invitation.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed. We have also Mohammed Al-Ansari. Can you hear us?
Yes, I do. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Dr. Salman. My name is Mohammed Al-Ansari. I'm a teaching assistant in Kuwait University Faculty of Medicine, currently doing a PhD in Durham University. I have one patent method in treating vitiligo, which has been commercialized globally. And we've got the patent granted last year. We have filed the patent in 2018.
Thanks all for the introduction. I might start with this question, and please, if you are on Zoom, you can raise your hand with the icon, and if you are here, just let me know. So we know that patents has a major application for not only for just for the economy of the country and putting Kuwait on the map, but also it has implication on advancement of science, and it has an impact on also on the ranking of the Kuwait University. And one of the important things that we look for is that how we can manage these patents and our patent portfolio, whether it's KU or with collaboration with Marcus Ahmed or Kisser, and how we can all work together with like in a bank and try to push this forward. So making sure that these patents are being utilized in a proper way. So when, for example, one question comes to my mind, and I'd like to have your comment. We have a successful example here that Mohammed Ansari will discuss. But what challenges you face in Kuwait today when it comes to patents? Maybe I can start with anyone from Kuwait, of course. Any challenges? What do you think? How we can improve? Okay, we're going to start with Dr. Ahmed Al-Hashim, and then Mohammed Ansari can see his hand.
The support. Once you have a patent, and that's very good academically, it's good for the ranking of the university, it's good for the academic staff, and it's also good if you can get a publication. But the patent itself is of no use unless you commercialize it. There are different types, of course, of patents, but what is required is the support.
The support in terms of financial support to try to translate the patent into something commercial, and also support in terms of strategy development and in terms of commercialization. So I think that has to be put in place in order to move patents from just patents to things that are useful, have an application, and generate revenue. So I think the key thing is the support, really. So funding and support.
That's an important point. So now when we think about patents, we have to think about not only the university, it's the whole ecosystem. So in the States, for example, a lot of these patents, correct me if I'm wrong, DJ, if you are here, that comes from the private sector. So how many patents that came out from the private sector in Kuwait? To my knowledge, zero. So all these companies that we have in Kuwait, they don't have patents. Okay? So the thing is that there should be a rebalance of the society where the non-profit organization, and also the business sector and the government sector should all work together. Because if you have a patent, for example, you had a patent, but you cannot manufacture it here in Kuwait, right? So you need to find an industry to do it for you. But the industry here is not ready for that. So that's what we're trying to say here. Is the challenge is not just in the university. Of course, we have challenges here. Of course, we're going to share our weakness and all that. But what's important is that we have to look into this into a holistic approach. We cannot just think about one sector, right? So, Mohammed Al-Ansari, I think you raised your hand, and then followed by Dr. Hutan.
Thank you very much. Challenges. Well, when we have an idea and we want to test this idea, especially in Faculty of Medicine, where, for example, a treatment, the first problem we face is the research committee. They might not just approve where other countries, they can approve it. I have an example in our treatment that's been patented and commercialized. First time when it wasn't commercialized, it wasn't patented, we got approval from Faculty of Medicine. And while it's been patented and commercialized, we've been, after the patent was granted, we were thinking to publish, right? Because we cannot publish if we are in a patent process, as Mr. Goldberg also stated this clearly. Now, in the second time, when the patent is granted and it's commercialized, meaning that the treatment is registered globally in European Union, Great Britain, and even neighboring countries like Saudi Arabia, the research wasn't approved because it depends on individuals. There is no rules or regulation. And as I've been discussing this before with other colleagues in Faculty of Medicine, many of the great ideas didn't come to light because their research wasn't approved. This is in one aspect. The second aspect, as has been addressed today, the manufacturing. Kuwait lost the manufacturing of this patent, BT treatment. We could have just produced it in Kuwait. We do have the capabilities, but it was not approved because of written rules this time. Because this treatment is, we just can't produce it in Kuwait. Where did you find this treatment? And it's difficult to explain to Ministry of Health that this is Kuwait University treatment. They would approve that you would manufacture a treatment that is already manufactured in Europe or in other states. But it's difficult to convince them that we found a treatment from Kuwait University, and it must be a treatment that is manufactured by a known company, and then later on you could have this. So this is two main obstacles that we have. And I think can be solved. The first is when we are addressing research that needs ethical approval. With this, we need education more for whoever is in this research community. I've been advised to try this cosmetics on animals first. If I do that, my treatment will be banned from Europe and UK, because there is an international law that cosmetic cannot be tested on animals, and in other countries as well. So I think they lack, some of this research committee members, they lack essential information, a very basic one, like where did you publish it? I can't publish it because I've been advised by the patent office, and really I thank you very much, Dr. Salman and your team. You're doing a great job. Our collaborators in Letman office, they've been very professional, and their advice led to the patent now being in its current stage. So I'm just addressing this problem. Maybe Marcus Sabah Al-Ahmed, KFS Kuwait University can collaborate to change some written rules and make better regulation of whoever research committees and research sector can solve these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed. First of all, congrats on commercializing the product, which we are very proud of. And that's really good. And as you said, we need to look into how we can better look at our regulations, and whether it's ethical approval versus industry, and how that's all can play all together. I think this is, at the beginning, I'm sure it will be challenging and difficult, but of course, once we raise this awareness about this challenge, and I'm sure many people will try to help and move this forward. And now we have a comment also from Dr. Hutan, and then followed by Dr. Nabil, and then Joshua and DJ. So go ahead, Professor Hutan.
Thanks, Salman. And again, I think this is a great opportunity for KU. The issue of patents is one of impact generation. And KU has, as far as I can see, a lot of innovators that have come out of it, and a lot of clever individuals, and has an appetite. And I think those two are very relevant. The concept, however, as you say, is there needs to be a culture of a scientist entrepreneur, and that needs to be encouraged. So when we look at the companies that I work with in Boston and how we interact with MIT, they have a technology licensing office, and as a institution, they are building the culture that anyone who gets faculty tenureship is already on the path of what can we do to generate your novelty, your concepts that are not obvious to anyone else, into something that is an instrument called a patent, that is a representation of innovation. And how can this patent not only exist as a concept, but how then is it licensed into a real product that can then be used? And these two elements is fundamental to the process of the university. The university wouldn't call itself impactful without this at its heart. So whilst many universities consider grants and papers as the functionality, actually in the technology universities, the really successful ones, and my company deals with many of them, and we actually go straight to them. You know, for me, it's very easy to go to MIT because I have 5 people already ready to tell me what are the great patents that I can then use in my sphere of biotech, for example, or digital AI. And I guess the building the culture of infrastructure, of licensing and patents within the university, having scientist entrepreneurs. We've met someone online just now talking about their company called Cleanse. This is very innovative. This is the exact type of nature that needs to be grown, seeded, replicated, grown again. And that's how I think KU can really make a big impact in this sport.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hutan. Dr. Nabil.
Thank you, Dr. Salman, and I have to be careful what I say next because one of my PhD supervisors is here, Professor Hutan. I might lose some marks if I don't say the right things. But from my humble experience in Kuwait and innovation that I personally faced overlies with what Dr. Muhammad Al-Ansari had mentioned about regulations and not understanding the concept of the innovation. Don't get me wrong, I got a lot of support from Kuwait, from Sabah Center, from KFAS, from Kuwait University in the form of grants, and a lot of support from Dr. Salman as well. But I think as an innovator in Kuwait, once you come up with an idea, the first thing people do, like your seniors and if they're at your university, professors or medical doctors and consultants at the hospital, the first thing they would do if you tell them an idea, and rightly so, they would go to Google, search the concept you just told them about, find a few results on the top of the results and tell you, hey, it's been done, it's been done before. So you, as a young innovator, might feel discouraged. And for you as an innovator, you might know what the difference or the key difference that you have from what exists already in the market. But it's still, it could be an abstract idea in your head, still an abstract concept, not well crystallized yet. So it's not easy for you to communicate how you can differentiate that to what exists in the market. If I may show one slide here just quickly. It took me a while to understand, and maybe this could be helpful for regulators in Kuwait also to really understand that there is a difference between that. If you want to invent something new, you have to look at the prior art, just like Joshua mentioned, and there are 3 different spheres to look at. So there is the intellectual property sphere, there is the academic sphere, where the publications are, and there is the commercial sphere. If you find competition in any of them, that doesn't mean competition in another space. So if I find prior art in the patent sphere, that doesn't mean it has been commercialized. It doesn't mean that evidence for it has been validated through papers. So we have to distinguish, because from my personal experience, many surgeons were skeptical that this has been done before. When I went through the experience of the commercialization process of the technology, I found out that there were really no competition available in the market. It was virtually zero competition. There was some, but no commercial products. So I think it is important for the innovators, because it took me a while to understand this as well. It took me a while to understand that there are 3 different spheres that we should look at before we start inventing, or even make a decision as regulators or as supervisors or professors at universities.
So thank you, Dr. Nabil, for your comment. We have Mr. DJ Can you, Professor DJ, can you just you raise your hand?
Yes. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak on this very important question. I'll give you some numbers because I really am a numbers person. I've led 3 university technology commercialization offices in the United States in the last 20 years. University of Nebraska, Rutgers University, and Ohio State. And the challenges that you lay out in terms of commercializing a patent are just similar to what we have in the US. And I will state 3 key challenges that we have at the university, all universities in the US. Number 1 is most of the technologies created are very early stage. So from a technology readiness level, you would see most of these technologies are probably at a TRL 2, 3 kind of a level. Most techs don't come to the commercial standards of taking something to market right away. The second is what we call the valley of death. The valley of death is the stage when a technology is, we think, ready, the academic side of things, but industry does not. And there's no funding available in between to bridge that gap. So there are many funds which have come up. For example, the National Science Foundation, which stepped up to the plate, and other federal agencies, and we have set aside about 1.5% to 3% of federal agencies' budget to bridge that valley of death, where academia stops working because they don't have the funding, and industry doesn't want to take on a research project to take something to market. So that is a critical factor to take technologies to market. And then the third one, which resonated a lot of your comments, is the lack of collaboration between academia and industry and government, the PPP as we call it, the public-private partnership. That is crucially important. I did some studies after doing about 500 plus licenses from various universities, being involved with 7 plus startups, very, very early stage startups. You look at 10 years of data, which publishes the academic tech transfer results, and 63.5% of US university patents will never get commercialized. And some universities have better results, some worse results, but on an average, over a 10-year period of time, that's what you're looking at. All of those patents will not make a single dollar in commercialization and will be abandoned ultimately. So, the paradigm that you are in at Kuwait University is probably not that different than some of the other universities that Professor Khan was talking about. MIT still has a problem with commercializing all of its invention. They're doing very, very well. But ultimately, if you look at it from a money-making standpoint, university tech commercialization is not there producing return on investment on the R&D that is being done. But most crucially, they are making products, hundreds and thousands of products, just saving lives in the market, which I think is crucially important to understand the impact, the true impact that we have from technology transfer, tech commercialization by taking these products to market. And we have a few very creative inventors already on the panel. So thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you for your comment. So, Mr. Hamid Aftan, and then followed by Joshua.
I think innovation is not luxury anymore. It's not a PR thing anymore that they are using. So as Dr. Salman said, yes, we need a holistic overview, including a private sector, including government, and also the third sector or the NGO, to make an assessment innovation report on where are we standing. And I think a global innovation index we can help us in our ranking. And we must find what's the missing tools that we have it in all aspects of our country. we are talking nationally in Kuwait or regionally GCC. We need synergy. We need to create a synergy situation between all these institutions. For example, now we are facing a problem with our innovators. Some of our innovators, the lack of tools. We can compare, we can measure the power of the chain by its weakest ring. So I think we have lack in education. I think we have lack in culture in Kuwait. I think it's if we want to mention our challenges, it would take a long time. But I think what we need here is to create a synergy situation between all institutes in Kuwait and put a reliable target, and let's find the tools to find it. For example, now some people innovators, okay, they are missing small things. They are missing the co-working space. They are missing incubator and even the medical invention. They need a big tools to test the idea before starting. I think we tried to issue a Gulf Innovation Center for medical innovation, but I think we didn't complete for many reasons, for many political reasons. I think what we need now to make a national innovation policy to rise with a clear target and put in our consideration the quality and the quantity of our patent. And I'm always saying that, especially for Dr. Mohammed Ansari or Dr. Ahmed Nabil, okay, talk about the commercializing thing, talk about the financial impact, but don't forget the social impact that you have in your invention, that this such impact and it's bigger than the financial to focus in your invention. And thank you.
Thank you for your valuable comment. Yeah, I agree. I mean, we need to have more meetings like this meeting and making sure we put a roadmap on Kuwait strategy for innovation. And especially we are lucky at KU that we have all kind of disciplines that we can utilize to help us with this strategy. Also, Joshua has a quick comment, and then Dr. Nasser.
Well, thank you, Dr. Salman, and thank you, everybody, for your comments. I agree with everything that's been said so far. And I go back to something that Professor Nag talked about, the 63.5% of patents that do not get commercialized. Clearly, nobody knows when they start out if your patent is one, your invention is one, that will be commercialized or not. It's important to look at all of your technologies and try to protect those which are available, because you don't know what the end result is going to look like. You don't necessarily know what's going to be successful or not. It's history and everything that's happened so far has many examples where you started research in one area and it wound up that you have a viable, useful, profitable product coming out of that research only in a different area than what you expected. It's important to really protect everything rather than just those which you think these are the most likely to be commercialized. The other aspect of it is looking at some of those universities that have these robust programs. It's a matter of finding champions, whether it's somebody at the university, whether it's somebody external to the university. But the university's business is not necessarily commercializing and bringing products to market. The university needs to find partners. And the only way to attract those partners is to protect the innovations, protect the technologies with patents. Without having those patents in place, you're not going to be able to find the partners to produce product, to manufacture, to do further clinical trials and research and development if it's a drug product, for example. All of those things go into it. It really is a matter of making sure you protect and get patents on all your innovations from the perspective of, do you know which ones will move forward or not? Not yet. Do you know which ones the marketplace will be interested in? Not yet. Do you know which ones are going to be able to generate licensing dollars, even if you don't make a product yourself? Not yet. That's why you really do need to have that broad brush, that broad focus, like many of those leading universities do, so that whatever happens, whatever results you wind up getting, you're protected and you're in a good position to commercialize and bring in revenue.
Right, thank you, Joshua, for the comment. So we'll have last comment from the panelists, Dr. Nasser, and then maybe we'll take one or two questions from the audience, and then we're going to summarize with the panel, and followed by a break.
Thank you, Dr. Salman. I'm just going to keep it brief. A lot has been said that I'll just maybe reiterate, but I wanted to thank the innovators for their critical challenges that they raised. We share them. And I think from what Ahmed Nabil said, I think in terms of like the patent office at Kuwait University, it's like, I think the goal was to provide those tools to these innovators, the researchers at Kuwait universities, to better brand or communicate. Sometimes these ideas have great potential and research, but it's like branding them, what makes them non-obvious and unique. I think we've got experts that we work with that just like help you with that small thing, tell you just like researching the market, this is unique. You may need to focus on this part. So I think that created, like having that tool communicated to our researchers at Kuwait University is critical, and hopefully they can work with them. And I think another point that I might emphasize is like yes, Kuwait University, we don't forget also our social role as an academic institution and to Kuwait society as well. And the last thing, also what Dr. Saad Merced, I would like to emphasize, I think it was spot on. Yes, there shouldn't be a big gap between, for us, like protecting the patents and then commercializing them. We would like to take it that step further and like emphasize that what can we do to link our innovators with the market, whether it's local or abroad. That's why in the pipeline, I believe there's like innovation parks or research parks at Kuwait University where maybe we can create that environment, as Dr. Salman said. So those are just a couple of points I wanted to bring up.
Thank you, Dr. Nasser. So at the end of the day, we are lucky at Kuwait University with all these experience. Those are the people we're working with, sometimes on a daily basis. So we're with whether it's the lawyer offices, whether experts in law, whether it's innovators. I think those are the main pillars that we depend on to progress our office. And I would like to thank you, all of you, for all your inputs and continuous support for the office. And I think this is an important message to the audience. Please join in. So if you have any ideas, if you have any thoughts, there is an office. If you want to manage this area, just come in. And I think we need to make sure that all the bright people are, we need to highlight them. Because this office is all about innovation and international collaboration. So we have to think about, people, if you are interested, come and join and make sure that your voice is heard. And you see, we have good partners, all of them our colleagues and friends, and we get an advice from them all the time, but also it's important that we progress. And in order to progress, we have to lay down the map, whether it's regulation, whether it's support, incentives, all this comes with it. But I think this is a good start today that we discuss all these important topics, and I'm sure in the future we need to keep this ongoing and make sure that the patents and the براءات الاختراع, we need to make sure that the message goes to to everyone that this it has major impact on university, major impact on the economy in the country. And with that, I'd like to thank you again for being here and for your time, and all the best. And thank you very much for being part of this session. في سؤال؟ اتفضل.
Thank you, guys. My question is to Dr. Nag. You have listed ranking of different institutions with their numbers of patents that they have produced per year. And based on you guys, it's actually one of the parameters that is most important to the patent industry is the commercializations of those patents. So if you include that parameter into this ranking of these patents, do you see a change in the ranking? For example, because you may have a company that maybe 30% of it has been 30% of its patents are commercialized, and the other one is maybe 10%. So if you include that parameter in your ranking, do you see big change? And can you just elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, that is an excellent question. Thank you for asking. And I was alluding to it before. Obviously one factor is the total number of dollars that the universities are bringing in. And people gravitate towards that number because that's the most obvious one. But I think more and more universities are looking at the societal impact, the number of jobs created, the number of products created. And as a practitioner who has been in the profession, I think it's more important to see the number of startups created. And then, as Professor Hukan was talking about, MIT is a leader. I mean, if you track the number of startups that MIT created over a period of 8 or 9 years, that was 240 plus startups that MIT created. And if you look at that impact, that in itself created the Cambridge ecosystem as we know it today. If you look at Stanford, Stanford does not have an incubator as such, but they have created the cradle for creating startups in Palo Alto. So the impact, if you will, is the number of licenses created, the number of startups created, effectively the number of technologies that's being taken to the market. And that's what people are looking at more so than the number of dollars created. So I think it's important to, again, underscore the fact that technology transfer, technology commercialization at universities and research hospitals is not there necessarily to make money. They do. And again, if you answer your question very directly, if you look at University of California, obviously it reports as a whole system. So there are 10 universities and 3 national labs which are combined and reporting that. So obviously the numbers are quite large if you track those numbers. The same with the University of Arizona, University of Florida, State University of New York. But, we are now moving away from those dollars and cents numbers and looking at overall. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you. There's one last question from the audience. بس عرفنا باسمك وشنو السؤال.
Hello everyone. I'm Dr. Saad Merced. I teach at Kuwait Technical College. My question is for everyone. How do you create a culture and grow the culture of patenting? Because we have a lot of students and they're creating all these applications and codes and really smart businesses. But we don't have that culture yet, so how do you start? How do you start that? Thank you.
I will try to answer this question. I think we can create a momentum, and there is already momentum. In 2010, if you know about Sustainable Development Goals in the United Nations, in Kuwait, that's why they established Sabah Al-Ahmed Center for Creativity, and they established the Kuwait Fund for supporting small and medium enterprise, and there was a big movement toward this. Now, most of the companies in the worldwide, even Kuwaitis company or who are working with abroad, they have to make sustainability report, and they must mention how many patents you are issued, and this is how they create the momentum. being here, it's part of this momentum that we are creating. This emphasis, and this is asking from Dr. Salman to increase the number of the patent, because now the patent is a part of, as one of the parameters for the universities. So that's why they create it on the institution level. So now we now create it on the student level. For example, talking about grade, talking about hours, talking about sometimes free parking for the student can help. You know what I mean? Just to create a momentum and create successful example. For example, Kuwait, till now we are talking about the app Talabat, and see how many apps it's come after it, and how much money were invested. And I know one of my friends, just an idea, he got maybe more than 100,000 KD from angel investor that they want to invest in a booming sector. Just to create a good example and put barriers and give them tools and empowerment. And I think part of the innovation empowerment tools, we need to focus on the AI, we need to focus on algorithm, we have to focus on the big data, in data mining. This is all tools we need to work on. And otherwise, in your Kuwait Tech or in Kuwait Invest or all education ministry. I hope I answered the question.
Right. So if everyone is satisfied, I think we have appreciation certification, but you guys who are not in Kuwait, you're not getting it. I'll keep it here for next year, so when you come, you can get it here. So we have, for our moderators and our panelists, a certification. So please, I need to hand it to you, and we'll start with Dr. Saad Merced. Come here, please. يعطيك العافية دكتور. We have السيد حمد العفتان. دكتور ناصر الرشيد. دكتور أحمد الهاشم.